high on the sacred slopes of Mount Parnassus, overlooking the shimmering Gulf of Corinth, there lay a place where mortals came to seek the voice of the gods. This was Delphi, the sanctuary of Apollo, the god of prophecy, music, and the arts. To the Greeks, it was not just a temple but the very center of the world, marked by the omphalos stone, the navel of the earth. According to legend, Zeus had released two eagles from opposite ends of the cosmos, and their flight paths crossed here, at Delphi, forever fixing it as the meeting point of the mortal and the divine. Yet Delphi was not always Apollo's. Long T. Before the god of light claimed it, the place was guarded by a monstrous serpent known as Python. From deep within the earth, this primordial creature embodied the raw powers of the land itself. Apollo, seeking to establish his oracle, slew the serpent with his arrows, leaving its body to rot. From this act came the name of the priestess, who would serve him, the Pythia, derived from Python, to rot. With the monster vanquished, Apollo's power replaced the earth's ancient spirit, and Delphi became his sacred seat. The temple that rose here in the 8th century BCE drew pilgrims from across Greece and beyond. At its heart was the inner chamber, the Ardeton, where the Pythia sat upon her tripod above a fissure in the earth. From this cleft, mysterious vapors were said to rise, sweet-smelling gases that carried the breath of Apollo himself. Ancient writers like Plutarch described how these fumes lifted the Pythia into a trance. Modern researchers have even suggested traces of ethylene in the rocks around Delphi, a gas capable of inducing ecstatic states. On the 7th day of each month, the day of Apollo's birth, the oracle could be consulted. Yet not all days were equal. In the cold months of winter, Apollo was believed to leave Delphi for the distant land of the Hyperboreans, and the temple doors were closed. Charte, Pythia, chosen from among the women of Delphi, was no ordinary figure. In earlier times, she was a virgin, but later, women over 50 were selected, though they dressed as maidens to honor the god. She had to be of noble character, for her role was sacred, to become the mouthpiece of Apollo. Before entering her trance, the Pythia underwent strict purification. She bathed in the sacred waters of the Castalian spring, abstained from worldly pleasures, and sometimes fasted. She chewed laurel leaves, Apollo's sacred plant, and held a laurel branch in her hand. Laurel was thought to bring divine inspiration, though some wondered whether it also contributed to her altered state. She burned barley and laurel as incense, and sometimes drank from the Cassotes spring within the temple itself. Only after these rites was she ready to descend into the Adyton and breathe in the god's voice. Pilgrims who sought her counsel also had to purify themselves. They washed in the Castalian spring, abstained from certain foods or acts, and wore clean garments suitable for the sacred precinct. Before they approached Apollo's priestess, they made offerings, coins, votive gifts, or animals for sacrifice. Goat or sheep was brought to the altar of Apollo, sprinkled with cold water. If it shivered, the gods had given their consent. If not, the oracle remained silent that day. Not every visitor had equal access. Some individuals, cities, or rulers possessed promontory, the privilege to consult first. For others, the wait could be long, for the oracle spoke only on chosen days. And always, the atmosphere was charged. The sound of chanting priests, the smell of incense, laurel branches waving in the breeze, the sight of gleaming treasuries where city-states stored their lavish offerings, golden vessels, tripods, and statues meant to honor Apollo and to display their own power. When the Pythia finally spoke, her words were not plain speech. In her trance, she uttered broken poetic phrases, sometimes in tongues, sometimes in riddling verse. Priests gathered her ecstatic cries and shaped them into hexameter lines, which they then delivered to the waiting pilgrim. The messages were famously cryptic, open to many interpretations, a quality that gave them both mystery and power. Take Croesus, king of Lydia, who asked if he should wage war against Persia. The oracle told him, If you cross the river Halys, a great empire will fall. Croesus believed it meant Persia's doom, but it was his own kingdom that perished. Or consider Themistocles, faced with the Persian invasion. When the Pythia declared, "Only the wooden wall shall not fall," he understood the oracle's riddle to mean Athens' fleet. Trusting this vision, the Athenians abandoned their city, fought by sea, and won their immortal victory at Salamis. Even philosophers sought her wisdom. When Socrates' friend asked the oracle who was the wisest of men, the Pythia replied that none was wiser than Socrates. Perplexed, he interpreted the message not as praise, but as a divine reminder. Wisdom lies in knowing that one knows nothing. For centuries, kings, generals, and commoners alike made the journey to Delphi. Its influence was not only religious, but political. The oracle's voice guided wars, shaped alliances, and legitimized rulers. Around the sanctuary, treasuries built by proud city-states displayed their wealth, turning Delphi into a hub of diplomacy and pan-Hellenic identity. But time eroded even this sacred power. As Christianity spread across the empire, the old gods fell silent. In the late 4th century CE, Emperor Theodosius I closed the pagan temples, and the voice of the Pythia was heard no more. Still, the ruins of Delphi endure. The broken columns, the silent stones, the omphalos itself, all whisper of a time when mortals sought the breath of a god in the heart of the earth, and a woman's voice, lifted in ecstasy, shaped the fate of nations.